From Green 960 in San Francisco, I'm Beth Greer, and this is your Supernatural Life. This show is part of the Green Morning, heard every Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific. My show is about taking natural living up a notch to supernatural living, and each week I interview top experts who show you ways to live a supernatural life. Well, when it comes to health, I'm a big believer in prevention, natural medicine, and naturopathic doctors. In fact, I don't have a regular physician. I haven't seen one of those for probably 9 years, ever since I realized I could heal my body naturally when I eliminated the tumor I had in my chest. In case you didn't know it, naturopathic doctors use the most natural, non-toxic, and least invasive therapies first. Plus, they always look for the underlying cause of illness and don't just treat symptoms the way most Western docs do. Well, my guest today is Dr. Dennis Godby, who became a naturopathic doctor at the ripe old age of 48. That in and of itself is pretty impressive, but there's more. He's the founder of The Run, which is the culmination of his 32 years and 45,000 miles of running. His first adventure run when he was in college studying exercise physiology and nutrition was a 37-mile-a-day, 1,420-mile solo journey. That's incredible. From Corvallis, Oregon to Calgary, Canada. And he was doing that to promote exercise and nutrition. Then in 84-85, he ran 3,006 miles from San Francisco to Washington, D.C. during 16 weeks of winter to promote peace and justice in Central America. Dr. Godby has his master's in theological studies and his doctorate in naturopathic medicine and has a practice in Midtown Sacramento. And he's here today to talk about his latest run, which will begin right here in San Francisco on July 17th, 2011, and end in Bridgeport, Connecticut on November 16th. This coast-to-coast run is designed to educate and empower Americans to improve their health using natural medicine. Welcome to your Supernatural Life, Dennis.
Thank you very much.
So you say that on your 4-month, 90-city journey, you hope to introduce the concept of naturopathic medicine into the national vocabulary and to make naturopath a household term. So what is the definition of naturopathic medicine? And as a naturopathic doctor, what's your approach to health?
Well, first of all, when somebody calls me, we oftentimes have a free 15-minute phone call before they come in because they don't necessarily know a whole lot about it. And so the first thing I tell them, they say, well, how do I treat ADD, or how do you treat diabetes, or how do you treat this? And I say, well, I don't know because it depends on what the cause is. So we don't necessarily just match, cinnamon or alpha-lipoic acid or whatever to that particular disease process. What we're trying to find out is why does the person have diabetes or cancer or ADD? Is it because of the poor diet? Is it because of stress? Because of cortisol levels? Is it neurotransmitters? So we're really trying to find the cause. And then we're treating with natural remedies. What we're trying to really do is remove the obstacles to cure. And oftentimes those obstacles to cure are our own attitude that we choose. And so I had a patient earlier today, and we said, so how do I make the changes? And I said, well, I would go back to the drawing board and see what got you to this place where you're adrenally fatigued and find out what is contributing. And I said, I would suspect that there's a lot of things that are partly things that we do to ourselves. And she says, oh, yeah, I agree. And I said, that's the hope, because the more that you can change, the better. So that gives us hope. A lot of things that we do that we've learned that are not very productive, but it's just what everybody else does, eat fast food or stress out or be a perfectionist or whatever. So we're really trying to find the cause.
So when you're looking for the cause, do you obviously, like you were talking to this woman, you were asking her questions. Do people fill out sort of a questionnaire? Do you take blood tests? Do you do urine tests? What's the general rule to kind of ferret out the ultimate underlying?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, what we start off with is a symptom questionnaire, and that pretty much covers all the systems of the body, and then we have health appraisal questionnaire, and then a lot of different things. Some of the things that are typical with any doctor, but a lot more extensive. It usually takes about an hour to fill out all the forms because we really want to find out before they come in. When they're there, if they have an adrenal or thyroid, or at least from a symptom perspective. And then we're going to do blood tests. I'll do a blood test on everybody, a 50-item blood panel we call the Dr. Weatherby panel. And it's the basics that we call the basics to really overlook their whole body because regardless of why they came in, we don't want to not find diabetes or to not find kidney problems. Or, our job is to try to find how can we help the body to get into balance psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, physically, not just to kind of take care of the reason why they came in. So that's what we're looking at first, but then we have to look at the whole body too, because we're looking at the whole body as a system rather than just parts.
Right. So in other words, most Western doctors, if they give you blood tests, they're really looking at just the physical, I'm assuming. They're not asking questions about psychological health and habit.
The whole range,
yeah.
You're right, and the whole range that they have is really based upon the reference ranges that you find in any lab. And I think this could be the bottom line too. One of the major things that I can talk about is the fact if you look at anybody, almost everybody that's listening now has done blood tests. And so there's a reference range which are very wide. And I oftentimes tell people that are in school, I say it's kind of like getting a 40% on your test is really low standards. And so what they're really looking for is a disease, like do you have kidney disease, do you have diabetes? They're not really looking about how can we prevent that disease. So our ranges are very narrow so that we can find things more readily. The number one complaint when people come to us see us is they say, my doctor didn't find anything, and that's because if you widen the ranges far enough, everybody looks healthy. But we know they're not healthy because they're tired, they're depressed, they feel terrible. They may not have a disease, but they certainly are not, they're certainly not living the American dream.
Right, they're not in their optimal health, and that's a really good distinction to make. I mean, I think that's a really, really good distinction to make, that just because it may be normal on a blood test, like you said, it could be 40% of normal, but it could well be 80% or 90% of normal. It would be a much better target.
Right. I tell patients that, I kind of jokingly tell patients, I said, the number one way you can irritate me, I don't think I get irritated too much, but if there's one way maybe, and that would be to say, well, I did blood tests, but I didn't bring them because everything was normal.
Oh. Right.
And because first of all, I need to see them, and I need to actually see the numbers, but also because the meaning to a mainstream doctor is totally different, because they're really, they have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and they're doing their job, but they're trying to screen out whether a person has a disease. But we feel like we failed if we wait until they get a disease.
Right.
We're trying to help people to give optimally, not just to not have a bad thing. Just like one of the things I've been telling people lately is that we don't teach our children we hope that you just don't become a drug addict or you just don't end up in jail. No, that sounds ridiculous. We want to say, kids, we hope that you have joy in life, that you have a happy marriage, or that you live your dreams and you fulfill your potential, and great stuff, not have bad stuff.
Right. That's a good point. So, how much training is involved to become an ND? And do you go to? Is it a type of medical school that?
Well, first of all, we have to have a bachelor's when we get in, and then we have about maybe 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 people accepted into our medical schools. But you have to have a lot of prerequisites before you get in. Like I hadn't been to school in terms of sciences for about 20 years because I'd been doing masters, but bachelor's had been a long time. So I did about a year and a half of prerequisites, and then I did the medical school. We actually take as required by law, we take the identical classes that MDs take, but then we also take about an additional 25 classes because we have to take all the natural medicine, homeopathy, and Chinese medicine, and nutrition, and botanicals or herbals, and physical therapy, and that kind of thing. So we actually spend about a year longer in classroom than actual MDs. They have the advantage that they have more because they have a required residency after that we don't. They have hospital privileges and that kind of thing that we don't have. So they have an advantage in terms of clinical hours after we graduate, and we have an advantage in terms of the number of hours actually in the classroom.
Now, not that you would want to, but do you have the privilege of writing a prescription for a pharmaceutical drug or just for herbal kinds of things?
In the state of California, we don't. We can prescribe natural hormones, testosterone and estrogens and cortisol and insulin, but or synthetic ones, so pharmaceutical synthetic drugs like thyroid hormones, and then also epinephrine in an emergency. But that's it. And our formulary is very small. In Oregon and Washington and other states where there's naturopathic schools, they have larger formularies. In fact, in Oregon, they can prescribe the exact same. Any primary care doctor, whether you're a naturopathic doctor or a medical doctor, can prescribe the exact same drugs because we are natural medicine primary care doctors. That's our main charism is a primary care doctor.
I see.
But mostly, it doesn't affect me because I don't want to prescribe drugs anyway. I'm not opposed to them, but I know that if I knew if there's an H. pylori infection and we're going to treat it with an antibiotic, I just send them to the doctor and they'll happily do that. So it's a good good relationship between doctors. You have a high ALT and AST liver enzymes, we need to send you to get an abdominal ultrasound at MD because we don't have abdominal ultrasounds, just like we have a lot of tests, urine tests, stool tests, a lot of tests that they don't have.
So let's talk about the run for a moment. Why run 3,250 miles across the country? That's a big commitment.
It's a big commitment, but we have a troubled nation. We have a minority of people that are getting healthier. The kind of people that may go to Whole Foods or may be listening to your program. But there's a whole segment of the population, the majority of people are getting unhealthier. 1 out of 3 kids born in this century are expected to get diabetes. I've never seen a child ever have optimal levels of vitamin D. We have kids that are depressed and anxious. 1 out of 2 people are expected to get cancer down the road. So we have a huge mountain to climb, and I really feel just like I'm going to have mountains to climb when I go over the Rockies and the Sierras.
Right.
But it's really saying the point of the run is this. I love what I do so much, and I love health, and this is really, really important to me, just like it is to a lot of Americans. I have the energy. I'm 54 years of age. I've done previous runs like this, and I want to get out and in the media, because media, likes these events where somebody's putting their body and their life on the line, not just talking about it. We don't see pharmaceutical reps running across the United States for their beliefs. And when you believe something passionately in something, that I think you can do this because you say the American people are at stake. Because I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror and say I did what I could do. And this is what I could do. I'm not a great scientist. I became a doctor at 48. Fell asleep in class a few times, with my early morning job at 2:30 in the morning. So I don't feel like that's really my best is to do the scientific stuff. My best is to be with people and to make a difference by being an activist, because I have been an activist for 30 years of my life, and that's what I feel like I contribute to naturopathic medicine. And so it's kind of it's just basically putting my body and my beliefs on the line.
That's fantastic. And I wanted to know what you thought was the biggest misconception people have about naturopathic medicine.
Well, the first thing that people ask me, I oftentimes, I like to kind of joke with people because to kind of like break down the barriers, because sometimes people are like, I want to kind of go natural, but I don't know, is this kind of weird, or, do they do crystals or whatever? And so I usually start off with something like, kind of outrageous, like, yeah, we diagnose with crystals or whatever, that kind of thing. And so something that they would maybe expect to hear, and then I said, no, I'm just kidding. We actually use lab tests, and on, because I want them to feel comfortable. I mean, for those people that diagnose with crystals, maybe that works too. But I want them to know that we study the exact same classes that they do, the natural remedies. This is not something we actually should be called traditional medicine. Many people come in and they go, traditional medicine, this. And said, traditional medicine doesn't go back 50, 80 years to antibiotics. Traditional medicine goes back to our ancestors, like hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Right.
Chinese medicine is traditional medicine.
That's a very excellent point. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to find out about what your run is going to look like and who's supporting you in all this. So we'll be right back.